its fair prices and good government policies, no child would ever go hungry again. And I always like to have a picture of my grandmother because a lot of people didn't know she existed. He would say, she would say that. She was with him for 69 years, and the only reason why they were married 69 years is he was never around. She was really the head of the family. He kind of would come home and we kind of put him to the side because she was in control. So I think that was good for him. But the picture you see below, he had never seen all of his prizes together. So in 2007 at Texas A&M, I got the Medal of Freedom, the Congressional Medal, and the Nobel Peace Prize together. And it was, I think, the first time he ever sat back and looked, and he was like, I did get all of these. So it was it was a neat experience for him. Before I go any farther, I always like to humanize my grandfather a little because a lot of times when you hear people talk of him, he's almost treated at a level of a head of state. And I like to make him a little human, to make anyone in the audience realize you can be Norm Borlaug, you can be the next Borlaug, anyone you're working with, some of the youth, some of the women, they can be the next person that really leaps, that takes us forward, that will feed the 9 billion people. Those are pictures of him, and then that was a recent trip of me in Kenya and Rwanda, and this was a Kenyan, that's the Rwandan wheat field, and this was their first wheat growing that they had ever done, so I had to jump out and get a picture for him. But when I like to talk about my grandfather, growing up with my grandfather, it really wasn't a normal experience. He wasn't around a lot. We lived in Dallas, all the children. There were 2 children, 5 grandchildren. And he would fly through Dallas, coming back from Asia or Africa on his way to Mexico, or it'd be the reverse. So we had him for about 48 hours, maybe to 72 hours. And I have an identical twin, so he was a voracious reader. And I don't think he ever noticed that we'd set up a beauty parlor on him, that we dumped water on him. I cannot find my pictures of his hair in pink curlers. And I don't think he ever once realized, he never really looked up from his reading, realized what we were doing to him. So we had occasional visits. He was the things he was most interested in his grandchildren about were education and sports. He felt that those were important things. He thought sports taught you how to win and lose. He thought it taught about respect for other authority figures. He did not believe that everyone deserved the same level trophy. So in the Borlaug family, our kids are pretty competitive, but they all don't get pats on the backs for winning and losing, and everyone's equal. He thought it was a great lesson to learn to lose. If you learn to lose, you learned you need to practice that much harder, and I think that was part of his spirit. He was a collegiate wrestler, and I think his scrappiness and will to really fight and win is what actually gave him the determination to do what he did in agriculture. I believe that was 1985, he got a building at the University of Minnesota. I don't think any of the grandchildren really understood what was going on. We just wanted to go to the student union and get sweatshirts. He did make my college. He made every grandchild's high school and college graduation, and he spoke at all of our respective institutions. He actually flew back from Africa to Texas A&M and then flew out the next day. But he did make it. And then that is my son up there. My grandfather had 3 children. 1 did not survive after birth. And he had 5 grandchildren. And at the time of his death, he had 6 great-grandchildren. He made my mother's birth, and he made Luke's birth. So he missed a lot in between. But it was really neat to have him see Luke and be around Luke because it was just a different world for him. He had never spent time around little babies, and it was interesting to see. So I was blessed that he got to have that time. I do like to say that I did take him to show and tell in 3rd grade. With the Nobel Peace Prize, he was upstaged by a hamster, which the only question he got was, did he have Secret Service with him? So that is what a 3rd grader thought of what a Nobel Peace Prize was. Apparently it was somewhat of a presidential thing. As I got older, I became more interested in the work he did, and I was the one grandchild that kind of spent a lot of time talking to him when he was around. And I remember one Christmas I asked him why the U.S. hadn't signed the Kyoto Treaty. That was a 3-hour conversation. We started with the Big Bang Theory, and then we got up to where we currently were, but his whole point was you had to understand history. You needed to understand why we choose some of the things we do, and you had to have a basis of what we are doing. And so history was very important, and history repeats itself, and that was a lesson he wanted me to learn. As I grew up and became more of an adult, became more involved in his life, he was more extraordinary. I got to be with him through the entire Congressional Gold Medal ceremony. I don't think many people know, but the Congressional Gold Medal is personalized per recipient. And he wasn't too excited to tell me what he wanted on the Congressional Medal. We had, what would you like? Would you like this? Would you like that? And to him, an award was a platform to talk about international agriculture. It wasn't so much the award itself. And my grandmother heard he and I going back and forth. My grandmother said, well, just put me on it if he doesn't care. I kind of deserve it. But we did not do that. We didn't do that. So when I was at the Congressional Gold Medal ceremony, he had 2 minutes to speak. Every person, every leader in Congress spoke, the president spoke, and they were going to get through this in an hour, and there were 2 songs. And he had 2 minutes to speak. If you ever saw my grandfather speak, that was never going to happen. I had threatened him. We had talked about this multiple times. He got up to speak. We were 2 minutes. We were 10 minutes. We were 15 minutes. I had people poking on me saying, you've got to make him stop. He can't go on any longer. The congressional building was shut down at that time for the event. And I leaned forward and I said to President Bush, they'd like him to stop. Can you get him to stop?